So recently, I coached a boomer. Some of you guys might already know who he is, but this is nattyAim, a salaryman in his mid-30s turned Valorant creator who recently has been making rounds on YouTube. He took a massive leap of faith by quitting his job and deciding to chase his passion to become a FPS gamer, and has been documenting his journey on his YouTube channel. I heavily respect his drive and I want to support him in reaching his goals, so I reached out and he was also very willing to give it a go. So we got in a call and this is how the coaching session went. Now before we head in, I also wanted to make a big announcement. I've decided to start a Valorant guild. You see, I love helping players improve, and I also love sharing my personal philosophy on Valorant, improvement, and even life, but I've never felt like YouTube was the best place for it. I make helpful guide videos, sure, but depending on the topic, it varies greatly who gets to see it and how it will perform. For example, my video on peeking did amazingly, whereas another video I made about the lost connection between aim and game sense didn't quite land. Yet I feel like that video is just important as my peeking one. I feel like I have so much to share, and I don't want to think about whether a topic is good enough to make a video about it. Instead, I'd much rather think, is this going to help someone who is serious about improvement? And go from there. As such, I decided to create the Royal Guild as my private coaching Discord where I'll be teaching classes, hosting group sessions and other events, and most importantly, cultivating a mature and safe community where you can improve and learn with other like-minded players. Now, I'm only human, and the guild is still quite bare bones. As such, I'm going to be giving a lifetime discount to the first 300 members, and also capping the entry until I feel ready to expand, if I even do that. But if you're interested, feel free to check out the link in the description, and I'm excited to help you guys improve. Now, let's head into the video. I believe it would be best for us to take a look at your gameplay a little bit in terms of the training range, how you practice with some bots, and then also a quick tracker review. And then we move into the more specific things that come into reviewing your gameplay.
Okay.
The thing with, I guess, coaching in general, when I think about coaching has different phases, I suppose, for different players, right? If I'm coaching someone who's a Immortal Plus player and he's looking for, improvements, what I'm going to be focusing on in a VOD review is going to be the very minute things, the very specific tendencies that they have that changes how they approach a situation. Maybe some more logical related, this in this situation you chose XYZ thing. Instead, this would be a better option or something like that. More focused on the details. But when it comes to coaching people who are in lower ranks or people who are in the mid ranks, the scope of coaching actually changes. So instead of coaching on the details, the goal would actually instead be coaching on the bigger picture. So for you, since you're at a lower rank right now and you're just getting started, coaching would probably be more focused on the direction that you go with how you train, how you set yourself up for the best fundamentals, and then a bigger picture idea of understanding Valorant from a more holistic perspective, I suppose. I think tracker is very valuable in general, just to get a better idea of your progress and stats and stuff like that. There's a lot of data, right? And I'm sure you understand too that data, doesn't tell the whole story, but it's also a big part of the story. I guess having the data to kind of draw connections is a pretty valuable thing, especially when you're trying to understand some of the smaller mistakes that you might be making, or just some bigger picture things to improve on. For example, things like headshot percentages, damage delta, and stuff like that. They kind of give you an idea of what you're doing right and what you're doing wrong, and sometimes imbalances in your gameplay. I think that using a tracker review is always really helpful because if you're able to kind of take a look at your stats and see the growth day in, day out, or even just look at your gameplay from one day to the next, you can kind of draw more connections. Sometimes you can see games where you do really well and you might want to click on it and just see oh, hey, what's going on here? What did I do right here? Or maybe a game where you played really badly and maybe it could be what did I do wrong here? And you can take a look at these kind of games and get the more details into it.
Right. Okay. Understood.
Yeah. So anyways, let's get started on the tracker review.
Okay.
So looking at your stats right now, you are losing more than you're winning, and that's perfectly fine, especially because you're just starting out, you're playing ranked. You're probably not the most accustomed to the game like as a whole anyways, and you're throwing yourself into a competitive environment. Of course, not to say that like, you know, you're like justified in having like really low stats, you know, for that, but you're playing fine as a player trying to still learn. But there are some things that like I can tell very quickly that you might want to improve on. So for example, your headshot percentage is exceptionally low. And this is something that's like kind of like, you know, something I talk about very often when it comes to tracker reviews that I do on stream sometimes, is that like high headshot percentage isn't a good thing. Low headshot percentage isn't a good thing. A good headshot percentage is around 20 to 24%, especially with an agent like Yoru that you're maining. Having high headshot or having low headshot percentage means that you're actually not hitting like heads, right? When it comes to like agents like Viper and stuff like that, like their mollies actually count as like headshot. Their ticks count as tags to the body, which like lowers headshot percentage and stuff like that. Generally around 20% is where you want to be sitting at in order to kind of be like a balanced player. And I'll explain this in the sense of like, if you are someone with low headshot percentage, right, you're probably spamming the body too often. You're still kind of low rank, which is, it's perfectly justifiable. It's perfectly normal. And you're probably not, you know, aiming for the head as you enter an engagement. Part of what you'd want to do in order to fix that, of course, is a very simple like answer, which is aim training. Aim training and being more conscious of shooting for the head. However, there's people who have very high headshot percentage, and this is, you know, not your problem currently, but it is a general thing, is that like if you have too high of a headshot percentage, then it means you're aiming too much for the head. And then if you're aiming too much for the head, you're probably not being very practical with your fights, which means there are times where you could have shot at the body and killed someone, but you chose to shoot at the head instead. And as a result, you know, maybe you're not actually getting the most out of your current set of skills.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
It's like a big balance of things. And right now, as a new player, generally new players are more practical about things, which is, you know, why your current headshot percentage is very low. But as you improve, you're going to want to start focusing a little bit more on trying to find the balance between practical and ideal gameplay and making that into like, I guess, improvement line. You don't want to focus too heavily on one thing. But anyways, your damage and KD and damage delta and stuff like this, if you don't know what damage delta is, it just means how much damage you receive for damage you deal. It's based on per round, so it's not like, you know, every one damage you deal, you loot, like you take 24 damage, but it's like every round, on average, you take 24 more damage than you deal. And that means you're losing more than you win, generally.
Right. So I'm netting negative 24 damage per round.
Yes, you're net negative. Yeah, net negative 24 damage per round, and it kind of represents itself in like your other stats right now, right? So your KD and your damage per round, they're kind of low. Your ACS is kind of low. You know, you might not have a good idea of how to be impactful right now, and your headshot percentage is also kind of low, which means you're not comfortable enough with your duels. So those are kind of like the main things as a new player you're probably going to want to work.
Okay.
Yeah. So apart from that though, I mean, it's good that you focus on one agent. Like I always tell people like, hey, you need to like focus on one agent, because one agent is like, you don't know how much you don't know until you learn one agent fully. I think of it like this. You like level up with each agent, right? You know, let's just say there's like 5 levels. If you're level 2 with all agents, then the only thing you really know about is up to level 2. But if you're level 5 with like one agent, for example, Yoru, and you're level 1 with a lot of other agents, you look at your level 1 agents and you can say, oh, I'm not good at this agent because I don't have the, you know, the knowledge to do these things that normally I would be able to do with my agent that I'm at like level 5 with.
Okay, that makes sense.
The other thing I also want to say though is that different agents have different levels of complexity. So if you're playing a lot of Yoru, like I say Yoru is a fun agent, but it's also very hard for a new player to learn. You know, it's basically all up to you, right? On this, like whatever agent you feel like you want to play. So I'm not going to try to tell you how to play, you know, what agent you have to play and stuff like that, because I think at the end of the day, the most important part of playing Valorant is you have fun, because if you're not having fun, you're not improving like as fast as you could be. And you're also probably not liking, like you're going to burn out, right? So, you know, if you really enjoy Yoru, stick to Yoru, but Yoru is one of the hard agents along with agents like Viper, Sky. Like those agents are very hard to play, which means that if you're trying to improve your mechanics and fundamentals, you're basically adding another layer of of difficulty into that, because you're now like kind of putting yourself in this spot where you have to learn all these other things that can be very, very like very confusing when put together.
Is there like a particular agent that you would recommend for me to pick up aside from Yoru?
If you want to have a very like basic agent, my suggestion is you play either Reyna, maybe Clove is like kind of simple. And actually, in my opinion, one agent that I've been thinking recently that could actually be extremely helpful for new players is ISO. Which is like, I think people haven't really mentioned it much, but I actually think ISO might be better than Reyna in learning how to play as a new player. And I don't say this because I'm biased towards ISO as like, you know, like making the memes about being an ISO voice actor or some stupid stuff like that, or like playing ISO to Radiant and stuff. And I'm an ISO main myself, so just, you know, take this with a grain of salt. But I think ISO rewards you for proper fundamentals in a lot of cases.
I see.
So basically with ISO at the current state, right, you put a shield on and you have 12 seconds to use that shield, and then otherwise it's gone, right? And then if you kill someone, you get another shield if you hit the orb and stuff like that. And then you have like a push wall and whatever like, you know, other side stuff, right?
Right.
The thing with the current shield that ISO has is that it actually is very, very good for someone trying to learn how to take advantage of their utility and also understand how like the balance between going too deep and not going deep enough. When you have your shield up, you want to take fights. You want to be someone who's, you know, willing to take that one-on-one, which is something that, you know, low rank players are notoriously bad with because they're scared of taking one-on-ones. They're scared of dying. The second thing is when you win these fights, you get rewarded much more. You get rewarded for isolating fights because you get a shield that you can break. So if you are able to isolate a fight for yourself, you get another shield, you get to try this again. You get to do it again, and that means extra practice, extra chances for you to do things, extra chances for you to like make an impact in the round. The other thing is when your shield is out and you lose that shield, you become back to a normal agent, and somewhat even worse than, you know, a normal agent because you don't really have any more utility, which is, I mean, obviously perfectly normal, but you don't get that space for free unless you've used your shield to take space and take a fight. That makes it so that when you're playing ISO, you actually have a lot more of a feedback loop on making good plays, having good aim, and also taking good space.
I see.
Yeah, and that's like one thing that I think is extremely important for newer players. Newer players need to learn the fundamentals, most importantly. A mistake that a lot of people make is that they think that, you know, the mechanics are basic, or like fundamentals are basic, and therefore they're not important. But the truth is, as you get better as a player, the more you actually return back to the fundamentals. A lot of times when people improve up to higher ranks, they don't focus too much on the fundamentals. They don't build that foundation. They get to a certain point, they get stuck. They don't have any capability of climbing out, and they feel like they're not actually getting any better. A lot of times that's because their fundamentals is shaky. When they don't build up their aim well enough, they don't build up their movement well enough, they don't understand enough about, you know, taking space properly and just like being able to take advantage of your utility, you're kind of forced to return back to the basics and build up the ground floor, because if your ground floor isn't wide enough, everything else is just like, you know, really wobbly on a tower.
Okay.
In your case, right, it's also true for you. You want to be focusing on your mechanics, you want to be focusing on the fundamentals, and then you can focus on the other things. So the reason why Yoru doesn't quite fit into this is because Yoru has too many things that break fundamentals. You have a TP, right? A TP that, you know, is in some logic gimmicky. You have a flash that in some logic also is gimmicky. It's punishing people for looking at you, right? And you also have a decoy, which adds like, I mean, the decoy is just adding a bunch of chaos and stuff like that. But essentially your whole kit is filled with like kind of fundamental breaking abilities. And even though those abilities don't mean that you have bad fundamentals, if you don't have the proper fundamentals, they're just going to be what I stated, which is gimmicky abilities. The really good Yoru players, the reason why they're so good with Yoru is because their fundamentals are extremely good already, and then they use Yoru and they can handle the chaos that Yoru brings into the game.
I see. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And this is just my general recommendation, right? So it's like you can totally, work with it and go with it. And I don't think there's anything wrong with, sticking to Yoru if you enjoy him. But at the same time, you just have to recognize that like a lot of the things that you learn with Yoru right now might not become relevant later on, or might end up becoming crutches later on if you're not, building your fundamentals properly.
Would you say the same thing about playing controller agents as well? Because it kind of, takes you away from, isolating gunfights and taking the one-on-ones, but rather like staying back and...
Yes, I think so too. I think controllers in general, like people say Omen's a good agent to start with. I personally don't think Omen's a good agent to start with. Omen has very generally useful utility, and it's very good to punish people with, but it's not focused on you being good yourself. It's focused on you gimmicking other people or playing around smokes or kind of like, hoping that the enemy isn't aware enough. And also on attack side, you're basically like last one in or like, fourth one in. You're throwing smokes for your team. You're out of the action. You're not playing the game, as how it's meant to be played. That might be a wrong statement. Like, who am I to say how the game is meant to be played, right? But like,
no, I see what you mean.
Yeah. Like you're not taking aim duels. You're not setting yourself up for improvement. You want to keep on focusing on the prize, which is not the win. It's seeing yourself become better at the game.
Right. I mean, Yoru is definitely the agent that I guess want to main eventually, but if it's like I heard you say on stream like something along the line of like playing Yoru is almost like having a really fast car when you're a beginner driver and trying to handle like all the power and
I guess wait, you were there for that? Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So if it takes away from, learning the fundamentals, I'm willing to, put aside Yoru for a little while. I do find his kit like the most interesting and I guess fun to play with, but in terms of improving, I'm thinking of ISO right now, to be honest.
I personally recommend ISO. I think ISO is a very, very good fundamentals-based agent. And I think also, and it's not to toot my own horn, of course, but like I've been maining ISO and I've been seeing a lot of success in ranked. Like I'm playing against like Radiant players. I'm playing against like, Shazam and like other players like that who are like, at the top of their game, and I'm like crushing it. Because my fundamentals, in my opinion, are my strongest point. I've put in the most effort into understanding my fundamentals, and therefore I'm capable of taking advantage of ISO's kit the most. And that's something that I think, led me to like this conclusion, because I think ISO is just an agent that is very standardly rewarding to someone who enjoys the game for what it is, which is aim duels and proper like positioning, and just like, it's almost like you're playing CSGO but with like some extra steps. And I come from CSGO, so it's kind of like maybe that's why. But
no, what you're saying makes sense. It's at the end of the day, it's a tactical shooter game. So
yeah, that's why I think ISO is really good. It's like a tactical shooter. You're trying to isolate your ones. You're trying to take fights. You're not invincible enough as an agent with ISO to like just run into 3 people and just come out alive like a Jet can maybe do. Like he just gets one and dashes out or something, or Yoru takes a pick and then flashes out, takes a pick and then TPs away. Like ISO is like, if I swing out into this and there's 3 people looking at me, at best I'm getting 1 player. But however, if I swing out and I take a fight with 1 person, the chance of me winning this fight is much more likely. And also, if I were to succeed, I'm going to be rewarded greatly for it.
I see. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
With that being said, though, I'm pretty sure we're good with the tracker review, honestly. I mean, in general, it's just, I think it went a little longer than we needed to, but at the same time, I think it's good for the first time you're doing a tracker review or anything like that, to just give you an idea of like, the different things you could look for. You just need to like work on your fundamentals at the very baseline right now, and that's not anything new because you're bronze, right? You're still new to the game. Congrats on bronze, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
I think you're doing fine. But of course, the fastest path to improvement from this point here is definitely like, at the baseline, working on that foundation of mechanics and movement and duels and stuff like that. So what I'm going to be showing you right now is kind of like this sort of like kind of testing that I do with like almost every person I've kind of like taught in the past, because I think it's a good like it's a very quick and easy way to kind of set yourself at like a baseline that's relatively comfortable and has good reason. So what I want you to do is basically you have your mouse or your crosshair over a target, and then I want you to strafe around and try to keep your crosshair on that target, right? Like this. Like
okay.
how easy is it for you to do that?
Purely AD strafe or?
You could do, yeah, AD strafe, or you could do like diagonal if you want, but you don't have to like focus on that for now. Just do AD strafe if you want to keep it simple. Like kind of like that. So let's see what you're up to.
So let me focus on this one for now.
Yeah, maybe give yourself a little bit more distance just in case, because it's like, yeah, the closer you are, the more you have to like move around. So
okay.
Anyways, let's try it. Let's try moving. Okay, so from what I see right now as you're doing this, your sensitivity is too low.
Okay.
Slightly too low. My suggestion would be to increase it a little bit. Okay, it's 0.12. What's your DPI?
1600.
1600 point. Well, actually, okay, that's actually relatively normal. 800 at 0.24. It's on the lower end still. Still on the lower end.
Right.
I suggest increasing that by a couple points. So let me just explain to you why though. One thing that you probably already know, as you've probably learned from my movement video, is that your movement affects your aim. Right? If I'm moving, right, I'm aiming. And that means if I want to keep my crosshair on one point, for example, this head, I have to counteract the movement's effect with my aim, right?
Mm-hmm.
However, if your sensitivity is not something you can control well enough, or if your aim is not something you can control well enough, there's two outcomes that can happen. First, you have too low of a sensitivity, which means you're gonna move and you're constantly gonna be trying to like, you know, kind of adjust onto the target.
Yeah, that's what kind of looks like.
Yeah, that's what you were doing, right? And then for people who have too high of a sense, what they're doing is they're overdoing it and they're letting their movement have to like finish the movement for them, right? Like it's basically the left or right, like it's basically the opposite side, right? So it's like if you're too slow, you're trying to catch up to your movement. If you're too fast, your movement is trying to like catch up to your aim. In an ideal world, you're able to kind of just keep it on the target. I mean, you don't have to be perfect, right? But you want to be able to keep it on the target and move around and just like kind of aim at like this, right? It's like a very good judge of like whether your sensitivity is currently too high or too low, like based on your understanding of, you know, movement and stuff like that. So yeah, so for you, it's still like slightly on the lower side, but I think it's a little bit better now. Maybe if you want to just keep it right there, or maybe do like 0.15 and like, you know, play around at that much and just get more used to it. That would be a good idea.
Okay.
I mean, that's pretty good. I mean, honestly, it's not bad for what it is now. You're doing a lot less of the catching up part, right? Which is a huge part of it. The less you have to do catch up, the more like in tune with like your movement, your aim is technically getting.
I see.
Yeah, so this is like in my opinion, a general, you know, thing I like to do, because there are some people who play with some crazy sensitivities and they don't even realize that it's like hurting them, right? In your case, I think your sensitivity is not bad, but it's definitely on the lower side.
I find myself to be a low sensitivity player. I just find a lot more comfort in, I don't know, having the control, I guess.
Yeah. No, that's fair. I'm more of I'm a lazy player. At least that's what I think I call myself, is because I like to just use my wrist and move my arm slightly.
So is this part of a drill that I should be doing like on a daily basis?
Honestly, you could choose this as a drill if you wanted to do on a daily basis. If you want to like just, you know, test your control, or just like get a little bit of a check-in on how much you feel, how comfortable you feel with your movement, along with your aim, that's good, right? Like I think in the movement guide, that's one of the first things that you can try to do. Although it's like super basic, it's very helpful for multiple reasons, right? In this case, this is one of the reasons.
Yeah, I noticed my tracking is a lot more wobbly than what I saw on your screen.
Oh, I think it's just it's a personal thing. I think I'm pretty wobbly when I'm trying it myself, but I think it's because you're like actively putting your effort into like tracking it, so it probably feels more wobbly because there's more like I guess, feedback, but you're doing perfectly fine in my opinion. You're at least at a place where it's like it's way better than you started off with already. So, you know, maybe stick with that for the time being, just to like get a little bit more used to it.
Okay. Understood.
The other thing I want to see you do. So how comfortably can you do this kind of like, you know, strafe around and like tap targets? Like
Are
this
you,
kind of thing.
you know how there's like the 4 combination of like the AD strafe and adjusting the right and left?
Yes.
Which version are you doing, or are you?
I'm doing every version. I'm doing a mix of everything.
I see.
Yeah, so it's like the goal is like you need to be kind of like comfortable just moving around and taking fights while strafing around, but it's not like you have to. Like I'm basically like it's not to say that like you have to be a master of all 4, but all 4 are relevant, so it's good to like kind of know how to do it. But...
So like the fastest I can go is, I would say, hold on. It's more like,
okay.
Yeah, it kind of sucks.
No, you're fine. You're fine. I think one thing I do notice immediately though is that your movement itself is slightly jiggly and it's not precise, which is, you know, normal, of course, but it's something that you might want to start practicing a little bit more, is the way you stop your movement. So right now your movement itself isn't bad, it's the stopping that's weak. So if I'm swinging out and then I'm stopping, right, I want to be able to like stop on the target, or at least like stop where I feel like I'm ready to stop. What you're kind of currently doing is you're doing a little bit like this. Like you're stopping, but you're also like jiggling back a little bit.
I see.
And that means that you're over stopping yourself, or like you're pressing the other key for too long, or you're kind of reactively just pressing the other key because of, you know, a bad habit or something. So do you press the opposite key when you stop?
Yes, I do. But I can just try and release as well.
Yeah, you can do either one, whichever you feel like is more comfortable for you. But I would suggest the opposite key is better for getting a tactile feel of stopping your movement. But that's just because I'm from CSGO and I think that's, you know, it feels better for me. And it's also slightly better frame wise. Not very much though. Like, but every single like good player, you know, I've kind of seen is usually from CSGO anyways. So like a lot of people kind of like do the opposite key to stop themselves. Okay. Yeah. So just try to like keep on practicing that part of the movement for now. Your goal eventually is to be able to like chain together that sort of like movement into very minuscule like wait times, I suppose. I don't know if that made the most sense. Like basically you cut down on the dead time in between, right? Like you just continually go, you know, left and right. Of course, it's not dead zoning. Remember that?
Right. This is counter strafing.
Yes, this is counter strafing. I mean, or it's just like, you know, it's just stopping your move. Stopping and shooting is much better than dead zoning. Like, okay, so dead zoning as a technique isn't actually a technique that you can't use, and like pro players do use it. It's just in the case of dead zoning, it's like basically an advanced technique that when used intentionally by players with the adequate level of skill is a good technique. But if you're using it as someone who isn't mechanically very good and also understanding the exact reason why you want to dead zone at a certain point, it falls into bad habits of reactive play and also lack of control over your movement and lack of intentionality, which is like basically all kind of like pointing towards a lack of control. You want to have as much control over your movement as possible and your aim as possible at all times in order to be able to control the outcome of a duel.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Makes sense. So I will definitely add this drill to my practice.
Yeah, the ideal situation you want to reach, like if you're watching for like doing this kind of thing, is that you want to be able to kind of just like immediately, like it's almost as if you're dead zoning, but you're not actually dead zoning, because I could do like the same direction, like, you know, it's not like I'm dead zoning and like countering it by going the opposite direction. But like you want to be able to kind of just do this, right? Like you just want to be able to move around and just like shoot at things and like constantly be adjusting and like constantly like trying to shoot at heads. And the less downtime you have, the better your timing of your shot is, because If you give yourself too much time, like if I stop right here and then I wait like 2 seconds and shoot, like, I mean, yeah, I technically stopped, but was it actually that effective, right? It's not that effective, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense. So being like really crisp between the movements, I guess the stop, shoot, stop, shoot.
Yeah, that's what makes that practice drill more effective than just, you know, doing it one at a time. But of course, you have to first learn how to do it one at a time before you can do it all together, right? So what you're currently doing right now is like a large part of it.
Okay.
So yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
The goal at the end of the day, right, as a player is to become like as a player starting out is to master your mechanics as quickly as possible, because if you don't have the adequate like mechanics, then you're going to struggle in everything else.
Right.
Like it's your foundation. This is your physique right now. So like
Right.
Yeah, your physique's too weak. Doesn't matter how good of a boxer you are, you're not knocking out Mike Tyson, right? He's just gonna like destroy you. You're not gonna knock out that like bouncer at the club either, because he's just too big for you.
Yeah, I noticed that if I only isolate my right hand movement and aim, I think I am much better at that than trying to incorporate the movement into it right now.
Yeah. I would imagine that because you are doing aim labs, right? So you are used to kind of aiming without needing movement. But unfortunately, Valorant is a game that, you know, has a lot more movements elements into it. Despite it not being super complex, it is still precise. So, you know, whereas in like Overwatch or like, you know, maybe another game that's like a little bit longer time to kill, it's kind of like mixed martial arts and you're just kind of like bashing each other and trying to like come out on top. Valorant is more like a very strong karate punch or something. You just have to like throw a very perfect punch and then you win, right? You throw the knockout blow on the first punch.
Okay, that makes sense.
Anyways, let's get to the review on this a little bit. So what I usually do with video reviews or VOD reviews is I actually don't like to watch the whole game. I don't even like to watch more than like a few rounds in each half. The reason why is because, I mean, I don't think it's because I'm necessarily like capable of seeing it faster, but I think most good coaches can see what you're struggling with and see what you're like good at probably within a few rounds, and like can see problems for you to fix. Obviously, you know, there's more to add on to, but like I think for most cases, it's just much more efficient to just get that kind of like stuff sorted out in like a few rounds, because usually it's going to be more bigger picture mistakes that you're making. Okay, so putting a TP on the back while jiggling C, it's perfectly fine. I mean, something minuscule, like, you know, to note immediately is just that you're kind of jiggling this without the intention of even taking a fight.
Right, I'm just kind of checking it out.
Yeah, you're kind of checking it out. And I do think that in a lot of situations, especially with Yoru, you're not trying to do that, because if you jiggle, right, and you see them and you don't even give yourself a fighting chance to take a fight and you TP out, where are you going to be?
On the other side of the map.
Yeah, exactly. And that means your whole site is free for them to take. It's kind of like the same thing with Chamber. Like Chamber, as soon as Chamber TP's out, everyone could just run into site because there's nothing holding anymore.
Right.
So with Yoru, a lot of times Yoru players want to be more committal with like a fight before getting out, because if they are to rush you, if you don't get that first pick, or if you're just like giving them the opportunity and you're trading your TP and safety for, you know, just some information, it's not really a worthwhile trade because of the rotation time.
Okay.
But yeah, of course, not something you have to like really worry about too much. But I think it is important though to like jiggle things with the intention to potentially take a fight anyways, unless you're scared that they have like an op or something.
What about jump peeking? Is it the same philosophy?
Jump peeking is definitely the choice you would make if your goal is specifically to just get information and to bait out a shot or something. In those cases, you can't possibly shoot at them, right? Like you're not gonna be able to hit them while you're like jumping in midair. So that's like more of like a committed version of information gathering, which is, you know, fine, because that's the decision you make in that sort of situation, which is I want to get information. I don't want to take a fight at all. Right? And it's also slightly safer than jiggling, but jiggling gives you the option to at least have a chance to fight sometimes, as long as you do it properly.
Enemy spotted A. Down and out.
So something to keep in mind is that like while your teammates are fighting right here, right? Like right here while your teammates are fighting, you should also be ready to kind of take the fight as well.
Okay.
Because like even though they know you're here, right? Like they're spamming at you. Your teammates started swinging and started shooting. If they're fighting, you could honestly just swing out and take a fight again. If they're holding for you, they're gonna get shot at by someone else, right? So 3v1 is always better than kind of like, you know, even though technically speaking, like 2v1 is already more than enough. Like you guys all like being able to peek one guy together has like a lot more concentrated like, you know, chances of killing this guy quickly and also more efficiently. And also if they're actually trying to come into the site, you know, imagine 3 people are running through short. They're fighting your teammates. You want to be ready to like swing out and take shots at their heads while, you know, they're focused on your teammates, right? So the only thing you have to worry about is, you know, if the gecko is like if the gecko is really good at the game, maybe he'll be sitting back here and just holding for windows specifically to like catch you if you try to do that. But you are in a lower rank, so I think the fundamental, like the right fundamental play is to swing out and help your teammate.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
I guess this is kind of an excuse, but I was kind of scared of swinging out and taking a peek because people were spamming the wall that was where I was next to.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So they're spamming that wall, right? And in some cases, them spamming that wall is actually a better time for you to swing than anything because they're in the middle of just shooting and spraying, right? So their aim is actually worse. But of course, that's, you know, you didn't even need to use that as the way for you to win that situation. But if they're all focused on you and your teammates are starting to fight them, they're gonna switch their focus back onto the other team, onto your other teammates. So you have like a window to like kind of swing out and take that fight.
One enemy remaining.
So it's always a good idea to kind of think about your teammates and what they're doing in relation to like, you know, how you can take advantage of them. Okay, that was a relatively quick round. Let's skip to a later round since I'm assuming they're gonna have guns now and you're gonna have guns, so it's like everyone's kind of like got guns. Yeah, so once again, you're doing this kind of jiggle, right?
Right.
And you're not trying to shoot them. Yeah, you're definitely not like someone swings you right now, like out the window, you jiggled out, like you probably wouldn't have even, you know, been able to take a shot. And if you did take a shot, you'd be shooting at their foot, right? Something that I generally suggest, and I think most of the community also suggests, is that you want to maintain head level. You want to practice putting your crosshair at head level wherever you go.
Okay.
And that's like, so there's two sides to that, right? Like one is your crosshair placement itself. The other is your mental vision of where the head level is supposed to be. Because obviously both of those things tie in together. Like you want to be able to see your crosshair as an extension of your eyes or your focus. Wherever you're looking at and wherever you're focused on is where your crosshair should be trying to mimic.
I know this is not like a one size fits all, like there's not a straight answer to this, but should I be staring at the crosshair when I look around and look around with my mouse, or do you think keeping the crosshair somewhat, I guess, should I ever be looking away from the crosshair at any time?
Yeah, you should. You should be looking away from the crosshair, because you know you have a whole screen to get information from. But your crosshair should be where your primary focus is trying to be at.
Okay.
I mean, there's ways to make that more subconscious, right? Which is practicing headshot level. Like once you practice headshot level enough times, it's going to be kind of like subconscious that you keep your crosshair at headshot level because it's just the most easy place for you to place everything, right? It's almost like you're playing on fisheyes. You ever heard of that term before? Like fisheyes are like very horizontal, so it's like your up, down, vertical like aim is much less significant than your horizontal aim. You want to be at a point where that becomes more like natural to you, but that starts like to start that process, you have to start by first visualizing where the head is and then having your crosshair follow where you're visualizing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Understood.
But yeah, you still can move your eyes around and look at other things, but you also have to keep in mind, right? Like it's always going to be a balancing act because if your eyes are not on your crosshair and your crosshair is holding an angle and then someone peeks you, you're actually probably going to miss because your focus is not on the angle that you're holding.
Right.
And your focus is a very important part of your crosshair placement because You know, it's kind of like if you were to be like trying to play the reaction time test on like Human Benchmark, but you're looking at a separate screen, right? You're looking at a separate screen watching a YouTube video, and then the green shows up, and then you click, right? Like it's in your peripheral vision, sure, but the speed at which you're going to react to that is going to be a lot more variant and also probably slower by a considerable margin. Like when you're holding an angle, you kind of want to be looking at your crosshair because it's what you're focused on. But you can also, you know, at moments look at the minimap to gather some information very quickly and then regain your focus on the crosshair, you know, holding the angle, because you need to get some information. It's also very high value to like, you know, figure out what's going on around the map at that moment. Maybe something's happening. Some people actually abuse that. You know, at the very high levels, people can abuse the fact that something is happening on the other side of the map, and the enemy holding the angle might be looking at their mini-map for a brief moment, and then you peek out, and then you catch them off, right? People like, you know, lower rank players might say, oh, that's timing or something. But in reality, there is, at the very high level, there is those tiny minor details that really make a difference.
Spike down A.
So yeah, so like your crosshair's kind of like in the middle of nowhere right here, right? Like,
Right.
You're just kind of staring in the middle of that like sage wall. So that's another part of your crosshair placement, is that your crosshair placement wants to be in an area where you think the engagement's going to happen, right? So you want to like constantly be kind of aware of where your crosshair like ends up being, and your practice will be to kind of like consciously be aware of it as you play the game. It might cause you to actually get worse for a little bit, which might suck and it might feel frustrating, but it is the first step.
That's understandable. Yeah.
Yeah, you're learning a new skill basically when you start doing that.
Spikes here. Right here.
Cool. Okay, nice. It's also another thing for me to note is the conversation we had about Yoru right there, right? The reason I say that Yoru isn't as good of an agent to start off with or to learn from the start here is that if you're playing Yoru in this situation, right, there's so many different ways you could have approached that. You have so many variations and so many different ways to do that situation. And you also have a lot of ways that, like a lot of different executions of that situation. You know, you're in a smoke, right? You're in a smoke. You're like, your teammates right here, right? The enemies are swinging out from long, right? You put a decoy right here. You put a decoy right here, and then you like ran up and like you took the fight and then try to kill someone right here, right? So that's like an okay play, right? You did cause a little bit of distraction. Your goal was to like, you know, use this decoy and make them kind of like confused for a little bit or something like that. But what a good Yoru could have done is also, you know, threw this thing here, threw a flash on this side right here, swing out wide, flash again, swing again, right? In one swift motion, you can like clear out a whole site, right? Or you could have also done something like, you know, decoy this way, right? And then flash on this. Okay, well that sucked, but maybe like decoy this way, flash this angle, right? Someone swings out, hits a decoy, then you swing out, take the fight, and then like, you know, TP out, or, you know, jump back and then like throw a second flash like this or something. The amount of variations in that situation is like way too much for any player to really like think about when they're still starting off at the game, right? For you right now, right, like you probably wouldn't have thought of these different outcomes and different plays. You kind of thought of, okay, I'm gonna put a decoy down, I'm gonna just like swing out and like, you know.
Exactly.
So even though Yoru is like a very good agent in like the right hands, in your case you're not getting much out of him, right? You're just using him for the decoy. And that's also a way for you to like lose focus and like, you know, play the agent badly in situations too, because maybe you're gonna put a TP somewhere and then you're gonna like, I don't know, throw a flash and like try to TP out of it, but then, you know, you did it wrong, right? Or they're already ready for you, or you accidentally turned the wrong way and you like teleported in and you were looking at your own flash. Or like you're just never used to playing in this position before, so now you don't know what to do from here. So many different things that can happen as a Yoru player. You have a very high ceiling on all the cool things you could do. You just don't have a very high floor, and also it's very easy to come to the wrong conclusions, let's just say, you know, I was an ISO player, right? This situation right here, your job is to just put your shield up, swing out, and just fight them, and then like take the fights and like isolate your ones with an advantage, granted, right? So it's not like you're becoming strictly worse as a player by doing this. It's that like this is your optimal play. And in most cases, without utility, this is your optimal play. Maybe you push wall and then you swing out. Like at the very least, like you don't have a lot of different like weird variations of how you throw your flash, how you throw your wall, how you pop your shield. It's very standard. I'm gonna give myself a shield. I'm gonna take these fights now. I'm gonna like make sure like, you know, I focus on getting my one, because if I get my one, I get a shield, I get another one. You know, my teammates are fighting right now. I can swing again, right? And then I can go all the way around it, whatever I'm trying to do.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
It simplifies the game, but also makes you strong in the simple parts. And no one's at a like you're not at a rank where people are able to punish you for that necessarily either, right? Like with same with Yoru, right? It's like you could technically use any agent in low elo and probably climb your way out. But which one's gonna give you more improvement? The one where you just threw a bunch of random flashes and then, you know, somehow came out on top and killed a guy, or the one where it's like you just like chose your best option, you ran out, you took a fight, you know, killed a guy, and then killed another guy, right? Like this is like the more standard option that you're gonna do for probably other agents, and also is more fundamentally balanced because you're just taking a proper swing and like executing on it well.
Yeah, I think I need to stop playing Yoru to build my fundamentals first.
I do think that is the best play, but you know, you never know what your viewers are thinking. Maybe they really like to see you play Yoru. You know, improvement's sake, ISO is probably going to be the best. Same with like Reyna too here, right? It's like Reyna, if you were to think about Reyna, like what is Reyna going to do in this situation?
Maybe just throw a blind and just swing out.
Yeah, you just swing out here, throw an eye, swing out, right? Or you throw an eye and you swing out, right? And your fight is like very clear cut. This is what I'm trying to do. This is the fight that I'm going to take. You know, I live and die by this. If I do badly, I know what I did wrong. You're aiming kind of low in this case. You took 2 shots. Okay, that's fine. Yeah, so you're kind of aiming at like stomach level, right? So
right.
Also, okay, right here with this flash, right? What do you think you did wrong?
I mean, I was just thinking that I don't want the enemy to come to the spike, so I was just slow them down. But I think I might have placed the flash too far. Probably should have popped it, like bounced it inside the smoke.
Yes, yeah, you're correct. I mean, I think the idea of like trying to stall them to like not pick up the spike, I mean, technically that could work. It's very low reward. I mean, let's see how the rest of the play goes out after this, but basically you're not using your flash for yourself or anything. You're not using it for your teammate. You're kind of using it with like the, like, you know, you're stalling them, which is, you know, a justification, of course. But you could very well do the same thing if you just ran into the smoke and popped it out and then also swung with it. So it's not like an efficient use of your flash. And also, I think in general, when you think about your flashes, you want to be able to make it, first of all, hard to hit, hard to dodge, and also useful for yourself.
I see.
There's a lot of different ways you can use the Yoru flash, of course, but like stalling is generally not, you know, seen as the most useful way to to approach it.
Decoy. Portal closed.
One enemy remaining.
Oh, that's a nice shot. Oh, wait, those are nice shots. Okay, wait. Let me see.
One enemy remaining.
Okay, yeah. So your bursts were really good. The first shot was really good. Like it's not like super clean in the fact that like your aim itself is kind of like, or your shooting itself is like kind of, you know, a little bit sprayy, but not really a spray, but also a burst, but not really like resetting properly. But the aim adjustments was really nice. So that was nice. I think something that I will say that I noticed immediately though, as
One enemy remaining.
as you're moving around, is that I do think you have a bit of like unintentional movement, almost like it's kind of like autopilot, but I just say it's loss of focus because you're still a new player, like you're not sure what to focus on yet.
Right. I'm just kind of walking around and it just, I don't know. To me, it feels like I'm, you know, taking the wrong step every time I move.
Yeah, maybe you're getting in your own head on that too, but like your movement itself, I mean, you are kind of taking the wrong steps in some cases, and you're kind of like over moving, and you're also stopping at random moments, right? like, you're kind of like move around, knife out randomly, take your gun out, and then
One enemy remaining.
kind of did a little bit of like you just realized that your like teammate was over there like the moment like you spawn out and you're like, oh, he's there, that kind of thing. But yeah, so like I think in general it's like you're kind of playing very reactive right now. You're playing super reactive and you're not making your footsteps and like movement intentional. I think this is a good place for me to like kind of teach you that kind of concept, but like there's reactive elements into this game and then there's intentional elements. Intentional elements are always like the way that you want to approach taking control of a game, and I say this because I think control is the number one most important element of mastery in anything, in any skill, is that you want to be able to intentionally put yourself in the reactive parts that you want to take part in. Like you want to intentionally set yourself up for reactions. So what your movement leading up to this looked like was you were unintentionally putting yourself into this position and you reacted well.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, but given 10 situations like this, the outcome can vary very greatly because you didn't know why you did the things you did leading up to this point, and therefore the reaction itself, regardless of the outcome, is hard for you to judge and hard for you to replicate, right? So when you think about trying to review your own gameplay or think about how a round turned out, sometimes it's a very important element to be able to recognize what happened leading up to, a mistake, or what happened leading up to a bad outcome. Why did I do this thing that led me to peeking this angle? Why did I put myself in a position to do this thing to peek this angle? Was this intentional? If it's not intentional, was it like an overheat? Was it like, I just didn't know what I was doing and I felt antsy, right? Was it nervousness? Why did I do the thing? The first step is to recognize that you don't know the why right now, right? You have a bigger picture why, which is I'm going to follow my teammate, right? I see my teammate running up right there, so he's like, oh, okay, maybe I'll go like get close to him, right? So you take your knife out, take a few steps closer to him, right? Then you start peeking out this way, right? You're swinging out, you're reacting to you're not aware that your teammate's like already over there, so you didn't get the information as you were clearing this, which is like the safe time for you to understand that information, right? And then now you're like in a reactive situation and you're taking this fight, but the way that you approach to it is like the only thing that you did intentionally, leading up to that was I want to get close to my teammate. And also, I guess technically this moment where you like kind of cleared the angle a little bit, right? Like you realize, okay, I got to clear this angle slightly, right? So I guess the next thing that I would want to say is like, in order to build that reaction, right? Because that's like I'm presenting you the problem that you're dealing with, but I guess it's also good for me to give you an idea of how to fix that. Start only making decisions intentionally, and start trying to become more aware of the moments where you aren't being intentional, or like you're autopiloting, doing something just because you felt like doing it or something like that. Some examples could be like taking your knife out at some random moment or something, or holding like your crosshair in like in the middle of a wall and not really like looking at anything, or feeling like you're in a position that you've like never been in before and you're like really not sure what your game plan is, right? You want to always have a game plan if possible, but that's not something you're expected to have right now. But the first step to building the ability to have a game plan is to notice your surroundings and be aware of what's happening around you. You can do that by going into like death matches sometimes, right? Like you go to a death match and you're listening to where people are swinging from. You try to position yourself to take a fight with them. You want to like be able to kind of like react properly to their like swings and put yourself first into that like position to react to it.
To kind of piggyback off of what you said, I find it in deathmatch that like in these regular ranked matches, I find myself in a situation where I'm not sure what to do, and I just kind of take steps like just because I don't know, like I'm just spamming the WASD keys, not knowing what to do. Whereas in deathmatch, it's more simplified and I hear the enemies and I'm more conscious of like, okay, where do I place myself against this wall, or how do I peek this, or where should I walk to, or should I have a night out?
Okay.
So
if that's the case, then that probably means you have awareness of what's going on, but you're losing track of it in a game. Like in the game, you're not aware of what's happening and you're not capable of working with limited information, or you're like not good with working with limited information. If that's the case, then so I think there's two different approaches that you can kind of make, right? And I actually think you can benefit from a variation of both. I'm gonna go into a deathmatch really quickly, and I'm gonna show you what I mean.
Okay.
And in fact, like I can even show you a clip of deathmatch if you want, but like right now it should be okay like this. The thing with like what I said about intentional and reactive is that this applies to how you approach putting yourself into the right spots, because both of them kind of played into each other. You're always gonna have to react to things because you're not playing a single player game, right? You can't prepare for every single thing that happens, and you can't read what the enemy is going to do with 100% certainty. At the same time, you want to be intentional with like the kind of things you put yourself in. Like you're not going to peek a guy, at long range with a classic when they have a Vandal or an op or something, because you're probably going to die. You don't want to react to that. So there's two approaches, right? One approach is you try not to do things unless you have an intentional reason behind why you do it. And this is like trying to be aware, right? Like, and like, be aware of like what you're trying to do at each exact moment, right? Like, oh, I'm trying to like, peek this angle right here. So I'm going to like swing it. I'm going to try to peek this angle right here, right? I'm trying to like peek this angle right here. Now I'm going to like, fight another angle, right? This is like kind of like you being intentional with your decision making, and you kind of not moving unless you have a reason to move, which is okay. Right? This is one side of building up the awareness. The other side of it though, and this is an approach that I think is also extremely effective, and I think in a lot of cases without like structured learning, this is probably the more effective way. It's kind of like the street ball way of doing things, which is you just kind of like see what sticks, right? You just kind of go at things, right? And like learn through like iteration, constantly putting yourself in weird spots and like seeing what sticks, seeing what works. If it doesn't feel comfortable, figuring out like, okay, that doesn't feel comfortable, maybe I could try something else. What I mean by that is that you're constantly on the move. Like literally, I'm going to be like moving, running around like nonstop until I see an enemy and then try to react. Right, so it's like right here, like I'm running around, like constantly looking for fights, and I might get shot in the side of the head or whatever, but my reactions will happen as I'm like kind of consciously like executing on the fact that I have no intention other than to just run around and chase things.
So is it more like getting conditioned into the right movements as you're doing like as you're like kind of throwing everything, and I don't know, like...
Yes, kind of. It's like basically you're conditioning yourself to just being able to like move very fast and move very efficiently, right? Like I'm just running around and just like trying to chase fights, but I'm at the same time also trying to be intentional when I take the fight, but I'm reacting to like the fight happening, right? I might know where the enemy is like going to come from, but sometimes I'm going to be like, not prepared, or like someone's like hiding or something, or like someone peeks me from back there, right? Like I'm going to try to like readjust and take that fight. But I'm almost always just running around and like trying to like continually make movements and continually like, I guess, travel the map in some sense. And this is like kind of like, in my opinion, another really good way to practice, because you're trying to just like control your movements more naturally, without having any specific like goal in mind. And I think it's building your physique and movement in like the same analogy. If I'm trying to swing an enemy, right, and I know he's in this corner, technically all I have to do is just like take this peek and kill him, right? But the things that lead up to it is like, me making the proper preparation for it, me understanding where he is in that corner. Like those are things that like you can't really practice unless you're like extremely intentional about it, right? And being extremely intentional about it is in my opinion very hard to do in a very consistent like environment, especially something like ranked and stuff like that, right? You can't expect all these outcomes to like always go the way that you want it to, which means it's better for you to try to learn to deal with the reactiveness by becoming really good at reacting and like almost like letting yourself just react.
So within the process of just purely, I guess, reacting to, like running around and what's happening around you, would you say that you'd be able to, I guess, condition yourself to be more conscious about the movement that you're, or the decision that you're making in that process?
So the approach, or like the result of you kind of just like doing full reactive, is that it sets you into a system that lets you practice your movement more often, and almost build your execution of your movement in a non-intentional way. Like it's like kind of like if I'm if I'm in construction, right? I'm gonna have big muscles probably, right? Why do I have big muscles? Well, it wasn't because I went to the gym, right? I didn't go to the gym for the big muscles. It's because I work a construction job and I have to make ends meet. So now I have big muscles as a result of me doing that. In this case,
that makes sense.
Yeah, so I'm swinging around. I'm like kind of like falling into this and letting the systems around me shape how I improve. Like signing up for like a construction job is kind of like that sort of approach, which is, you know, I consciously decided I'm going to enter construction because maybe part of me also wants to have a fit, like in a healthy body, right? But I also needed to make ends meet at first, right? So your main intention isn't like to like become stronger or become like bigger or whatever, right? But it happens as a result. Now, comparing that to like intentionally going to the gym to train your body as a bodybuilder, right? There's two different approaches to that. One's not necessarily like way better than the other, especially if like you don't know what you can do at the gym at the moment or something, or you don't know what like your goal is at the gym. So when you kind of run around and just shoot at things, you're building up that movement without necessarily putting yourself into a spot that's like, I have to practice my movement with these specific drills. It gives you more freeform understanding of how to peak things and how to like, you know, swing angles that you might not normally be able to, you know, practice in a consistent way.
I see. And what you're saying is the former approach of like lifting weights intentionally is difficult yeah, what's right or wrong. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, and you also don't really know what's like, basically, unless you have like someone who's literally just like looking at you, you know, looking down your, like breathing down your neck, telling you exactly what to do. I mean, obviously none of us really fully know the exact most efficient way to improve your aim or mechanics and stuff like that. We can get pretty close. We can give you good ideas, but that still is going to have its own flaws, right? There's going to be drawbacks to it, which is, you know, sometimes you need to be able to think for yourself. Sometimes you need to like, you know, practice like certain aspects of your movement that isn't very normalized or like things like that. You have to be able to kind of like move out of the system in order to understand why the system works.
Mm-hmm.
So for you, I think the side that gets you the most experience is to just run it down in a deathmatch and just run around and swing things and like just constantly be moving. It's similar to like the kind of training range thing that I was talking about. It's like your goal is to be able to move around fast and kind of just like shoot at one thing after another, right? Your goal is to be fluid with your movements and be able to just like react to any situation happening with at least proper movement.
Mm-hmm.
The other step is you want to be intentional with using that tool, which is I only peak these things because I think this is where I should be peaking. Or I'm peaking this thing because I think an enemy is coming like soon and I want to like beat him to that angle, right? And then your practice doing things like very quickly and just kind of like reactively will become relevant in achieving that goal.
Would you say the same thing about playing ranked as well? Like doing more, I guess, sort of like a reckless play and seeing what sticks and trying to see in hindsight, or I guess trying to build getting conditioned into making the right moves because I don't know what really sticks or the right way to, to lift weights, or if I don't know why I'm moving, should I just, keep moving anyways and see what sticks?
Yeah, I actually think this is a very interesting and good segue into the thing I want to leave you with today. In my view, running it down in ranked and just like taking fights and just seeing what sticks and trying things out is the best way to improve. The truth is, at the end of the day, your goal as a player is to improve yourself.
Right.
You want to give yourself the best opportunity to learn more.
Right.
And that means limit testing yourself and trying things out and seeing how, seeing how far you could push your abilities. Will that lead to a win? Sometimes no. However, I also think that there's a very important analogy, I guess, that I tend to like share as well, which is, we talked about a little bit about basketball. We talked a little bit about like, boxing in some sense, or going to the gym and stuff like that. In real life, if I'm a 20-year-old guy who's okay at basketball and I go up against a 12-year-old kid who's really good at basketball, who's gonna win?
You, obviously, because of the sheer difference in physique and height.
Exactly. Right, exactly. Like, I tower over this kid, I'm just gonna dunk on him, right? He can't do anything against me because a lot of his options are gone simply because his physical limitations are biologically gated, unfortunately. In Valorant and in FPS games, and also, like, as you can see in chess, right? That's why we have like really young chess grandmasters and stuff. You're not biologically gated, which means if you can train your aim and your movement to a high enough level, and you can train like, the foundation of like your physique to a high enough level, you're essentially a 20-year-old playing against 12-year-olds. And what's the best way to beat a 12-year-old as a 20-year-old basketball player? How do you like do you have to even outplay them?
No.
Like, I could probably dribble and run faster than they can catch up with.
Right.
So why not just do that? Right? Why do I have to go through the mental hoops of playing smart, playing standard, playing, in some sense, bronze smart, right? When I don't actually need to. I can just run up to the hoop and dunk it on them. They can't do a single thing to me. I could just shoot wherever I want because they can't stop me from doing it. All I have to do to stop them from shooting is I just have to run up right next to them. Whatever they try to do, I'm just gonna block it right out of the air. That's your aim. That's your mechanics. That physical difference is huge. And the more you find ways to give yourself a system that lets you improve on that specifically, the faster you're going to see yourself climb up the ranks. Because at the end of the day, it is an FPS game, right? Your goal is to shoot the enemy before they shoot you. You kill that guy, it doesn't matter how cool his play was going to be. It doesn't matter how good of a Yoru player he was. If he didn't kill you, with a full set of util combo, or like if you swung him before he can like, use all his util on you and you killed him, then his round is over.
Yeah, I can just out-peek him, out-aim him, and just kill him, clicks his head, and he's dead.
Exactly. And there's nothing he can do about it. And this is why people hate like Smurfs, right? Like if you're like an immortal player just going down to silver and like, you're just like running it down on everyone as a Reyna. That's the exact thing that people, feel is like a giant wall against them. They can't do anything because even though they're swinging and like technically they're taking a fight that they're comfortable with, the other person just is way better. That's kind of like the harsh truth of ranking up. But it's also a very good thing to understand because that means you can climb up very, very fast as long as you focus on the right things.
Do you think purely playing more time in ranked will help me, I guess, if I were to play without intention in ranked gaming, if I were to just spam ranked games, even though it's not optimal, would I still build the intuition and the knowledge and the game sense to eventually find out what the right move is, or like, how do I say it?
Okay, so that's also another thing that I want to say, and this will support my point. So don't worry, it's not like oh shoot, I forgot to tell you this. Like now this changes everything. If we jump back to that analogy, right, the 12-year-old versus a 20-year-old. If I'm a 20-year-old, I can just out dribble the 12-year-old and shoot wherever I want, and then basically just like out physique him, right, and win. But can I do that against an 18-year-old?
Probably not.
Probably not as much, right? Not as much, right? Like I can maybe out physique him in some cases, but like in most cases, like, we're probably like, I have a slight advantage over you, right? And if we think about that in Valorant, it's like in an aim duel, I have a 60% chance of winning against you, right? But if you were to find a cool way to, you know, outplay me a little bit, that goes from a 60-40 to like a 45-55, right? Like you suddenly have an advantage as long as you find a small thing to like beat me with. Essentially, the rank that you're playing in right now, in iron or in bronze or in silver, the things that you learn, the ways that you understand game sense is always going to be different from what you learn when you reach a higher rank. When you eventually reach Diamond or Ascendant or Immortal, the way people play is going to be fundamentally different.
Okay.
There's going to be a different pace at which they take sites. There's going to be a different pace at which they, you know, a different like speed at which they kill you. There's going to be a different speed at which fights get resolved, which means team play is going to have to function differently, right? If you're playing in the NBA and like, you know, you're passing around and you're like, you're making a play, the speed at which that play is being made is too fast for someone who's younger to understand. And like, or they can understand it, but they can't keep up with it, right? So in those cases, if you don't have the proper physique, you can't even learn how to play at that level. I can be a silver player and I can't know how to play at an immortal level. I can't find how to play at an immortal level randomly just by spamming rank games, simply because the people that I'm playing against will never show me that side of the game. I'll never be able to understand it through example or through just, you know, seeing it happen to me.
I see. So at least for now, climbing out of the low elo ranks, I should be focusing purely on the FPS basic mechanics side of the game. And
yeah, because the more you practice your basics, the more you set yourself up for higher levels, and also the less you have to relearn. Because if I just practice my way up to the point where my physique was so good that all I had to do was outrun people from courtside and basically beat 13-year-old players, 16-year-old players, 18-year-old players, then only when I'm playing against 20-year-old players will I actually be forced to start thinking about things and start challenging my like knowledge of the game.
I see.
And in that situation, I am already learning 20-year-old basketball. I didn't have to learn 13-year-old basketball. I didn't have to learn 16-year-old basketball. I'm learning straight up 20-year-old basketball because that's where my physique has led me to already. I have the necessary foundation to reach a higher level.
Right. Which only then gives you the opportunity to learn.
To learn at that level. Yeah.
Right.
So the most efficient way for you is to like keep on hammering in those mechanics, because the better you get, the faster you climb out. The faster you climb out, the faster you get to, you know, see what the game is really about, right? And when you see what the game is really about, that's when you start learning about how you can outplay like the game at that level.
Yeah, I think you convinced me. I think I'm an ISO main now. I think I will build my physique first, climb out of the low ranks, and then I will start maining Yoru when I have the opportunity to. Because I think playing Yoru is pretty much like trying to think about the high-level stuff that I'm not even aware of, basically.
Exactly. And that's like, you know, it's not wrong to like try to do it, or like, you know, you can't be shamed for doing that kind of stuff because it's fun, right? But in some cases, it's just less efficient. And, you know, I'm glad you kind of like see where I'm coming from with that.
Yeah, I know. I think I've been in bodybuilding, or I shouldn't say bodybuilding, weightlifting, just casually for a couple of years. And I think in terms of the analogies you made, I think you hit the nail on the head. Yeah, I think I need to focus on the basics, at least for now, until I get to a higher level. And then I can branch off to more strategic side of the game. Yeah. And you'll also be able to just like, you know, have as little bad knowledge as possible. You don't have to rewrite you don't have to rewrite your save files or anything, like, you know, how the game is understood, right? You don't have to reinvent your philosophy on the game. I think I will unlock ISO and start maining ISO. Let's go, another ISO main converted. Let's go. I mean, I say that in like a troll way, but I seriously think ISO is going to be your biggest like asset when it comes to starting to learn the game. Okay. Yeah, especially with the knowledge that you have now and the understanding of the approach. Like, the more you train your mechanics, the more you train that stuff, like you're gonna see yourself improve really fast.
fast.
Understood. Sorry to take up so much of your time, but I think this coaching session was extremely useful for me in terms of pointing me in the right direction. So thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. I'm happy to help. I want to see you improve. So, if you improve, that means, in some way it bears well for me. So it's like kind of like that feeling that's like, I want to make sure that you have the best tools to get there. And I'm pretty happy that you wanted me to coach you in the first place too, because I'm sure there's like other coaches out there who would be happy to coach you as well. I think, it's an honor from my end to be able to help someone who's new and very passionate to try to improve at the game, especially when, but basically it's very rare to see a player like you show up in a community, as established as at this point. And I think that's, a really fresh breath of air. And I want to be part of it. I want to see what happens.
Thank you so much. Well, I will work on my basics and let me improve to prove your points right, hopefully.
I hope so. And of course, feel free to message me if you have any other questions and stuff like that.
Okay.
I'm totally open to that. And also, like, at the same time, like, if you do want to have another coaching session, like, we can set up some sort of schedule of like when we check in and stuff like that.
Okay, I will definitely let you know.
Yeah. I think that would be great. And okay, well,
thank you so much. I really appreciate you.
Oh, thank you. Enough of the wholesome stuff. Let's get to work.
Yeah, I will.
Can't wait to see the progress. And I'll see you later, man.
Thank you so much. I will talk to you later.
All right, peace.